Welcome to our part two of the 6-hour workshop to become a board-approved supervisor for marriage and family therapy associates in the state of Kentucky. I trust that you gained quite a bit of information from the first workshop. The first workshop is very, very important. It allows you in that first section of the workshop, I call it the first workshop because I think the 6-hour course is really divided into 3 distinct sections. So in the second section, we are looking at how to become the best supervisors we can become from using a model of supervision and et cetera. We're looking at how to help our supervisees achieve their goals of becoming the best supervisees they can become. Everything you looked at in the first module, the first workshop, was critically important to your work as supervisors of marriage and family therapy associates. You need to know the supervision statutes and the supervision regulations in order to supervise folks in a way that will allow them to achieve their goals of ultimately becoming licensed marriage and family therapy therapists in the state of Kentucky. The licensure supervision you do has to count, and the things you learned in the first 2 hours helps immensely with that. In this second section, we're looking at helping your supervisees develop into competent clinicians. Now, a word about how this is conceptualized by the folks who developed the AAMFT core competencies. Indeed, in 2003, I had the privilege of attending the AAMFT core competencies conference in Reno, Nevada. There were lots of people there, lots of stakeholders. There were people from licensure boards there, people from co-AMFT accredited MFT programs there, people from non-co-AMFT accredited MFT programs there, people from agencies, people from private practice, students. The AAMFT gathered a number of people in Reno, Nevada, in Nevada in the summer of 2003 to discuss the very critically important question of what are the competencies that a marriage and family therapist needs from the time that therapist in training takes the first course in what they call a qualifying for licensure program. Usually that's a master's program. Sometimes it's a doctoral program. Sometimes it's a post-degree institute. But what occurs from the time they take that first course in a licensure qualifying academic program through, now listen to this carefully, through the time that they're independently licensed, to the time where they are licensed in a way that they no longer need to work under someone else's supervision. That's a really important thing to consider. It's a really important thing to consider. It's important to consider because many of us think about the training period existing during the master's program or the post-degree institute program or the doctoral program for some people who begin their journey in a doc program and ending at graduation. That is a mistake that I believe will not help your supervisees develop as competently as they otherwise would. Because the AAMFT core competencies were designed with this notion in mind, and this is the way training works, that your master's programs, your post-degree institutes, etc., train clinicians to work to the point that when they graduate, they work competently under supervision as associate licensees or as entry-level professionals. And yes, I said associate licensees in the state of Kentucky. It's not a license, it's a permit. In Kentucky, it's a permit. In most other states, it's a license. So the idea is that we allow we're saying when we graduate people from master's programs or post-degree institutes that that person is now competent to pursue the entry-level credential. In Kentucky, it's the Marriage and Family Therapy Associate Permit. In many other states, it's a licensed Marriage and Family Therapy Associate License. In some states, it's called a Graduate Marriage and Family Therapy License. In some states, it's called a temporary license. But whatever it's called in a particular state, it's an entry-level credential in which a supervisor is helping to prepare that person who's graduated from a program to ultimately become competent to work independently. The journey begins with the first course a person takes in a licensure qualifying academic program and ends at independent licensure. So in the state of Kentucky, again, we have a permit. It's a Marriage and Family Therapy Associate Permit. It's not a license, but a permit. And our Marriage and Family Therapy Associates, it's assumed, still needs guidance. They still need development. They're not fully formed as marriage and family therapy professionals yet. And the person that's helping them complete that journey that they began at the point of their entry level course in their qualifying degree is you. So what are the first things that a person like you would want to do? Well, let me share my content. I'm going to share my desktop, and as I do, I'm going to pull up this PowerPoint related to developmental supervision. So when we look at developmental supervision, we can see several goals. Develop the relationship in the beginning stage. Assess supervisee's competencies. Educate the supervisee. Monitor the supervisee's early experiences. So this was developed by Haynes, Corey, and Moulton in 2003. I apologize for those of you who are APA aficionados. You'll see that we did not cite this as an in-text citation, but in the way that an in-text citation would be cited, we left the first initials there, but that's another issue, not related to our presentation itself. So I want to invite you to think about how you actually go about developing the relationship with your supervisees and the importance of that. Just as joining or forming an alliance is important with your clients, so it's important with your supervisees. Your supervisees will do better if they know that you're in it with them, that you're there to help them to develop, that working with you is safe in terms of them saying, I messed up in this area, or I'm confused in this other area, or I had no clue what to do in another area, or man, I really knocked it out of the park. I'd like for you to see that. So ideally, as you develop the relationship, as you form an alliance with them, they're going to perceive you as someone who is going to help them on their journey to becoming an excellent supervisor, and rather an excellent therapist. So as you help them on their journey to become an excellent therapist, it's really up to you in many ways to decide if you're going to be truly professional, truly a person who's going to take supervision seriously, and truly embrace the notion that this person still has competencies to gain, that training does not end, that the formation of an MFT does not end at graduation, that the training model established by the profession is that you finish your development and practice doing your licensure supervision. So developing that relationship in the beginning stage is important. It's also important to assess the supervisee's competencies, which is the second thing that we're looking at here. I have been dismayed through the years. I've often been dismayed through the years at how little supervisors in agencies, sometimes supervisors who are privately supervising people where the supervisee comes to their office, pays them for their expertise, etc., spends time assessing where the supervisee is competent. My suggestion to you is to look at the AAMFT core competencies and the AMFTRB domains and assess with your supervisees where they are at. I'll give you an easy way to do this as I move away from the PowerPoint for a moment and I move to amftrb.org. That's the Association of Marital and Family Therapy Regulatory Boards. You can see this, and if you're taking notes, you'll want to take a note here, amftrb.org, the Association of Marital and Family Therapy Regulatory Boards. So I would suggest with a new Marriage and Family Therapy Associate that you go to amftrb.org, and you click on the Student MFT Candidate and Licensees tab, and then you'll see a drop-down menu for the MFT exam. And as you do that, you can go to the handbook with them, and most of your supervisees have not passed the AMFTRB national exam yet, so it's good to go to here with them first and say, by the way, download this handbook, and as you download this handbook, scroll to page 11. Take notes, folks, because this is helpful, and have them scroll to page 11. And when they scroll to page 11, they see what they're going to be tested on in the national exam. Domain, the practice of systemic therapies. It defines what that is. It'll be 24% of their exam, 48 items. Domain 2, assessing, hypothesizing, diagnosing, 15.5% of their exam, 31 items, and so forth. You can see all 6 domains. Then scroll to the next page with them, which is page 12, and you can look at the subdomains under each domain with them and have them to look at this. I think this is a wonderful thing to do with new supervisees, particularly those who have not taken the licensure exam, because you're letting them know what the AMFTRB is obligated to test them on the licensure exam, as you can see, these 6 domains and percentages, and as it's broken down over the next several pages in the subdomains. But let me also discuss with you why that's important in assessing their knowledge, because these AMFTRB domains very much are like the AMFT core competencies. In fact, many academic programs do a crosswalk between particular AMFT core competencies and AMFTRB domains. The AMFTRB domains are more easy to get for people to wrap their arms around, and you can assess with them the areas that they are strong in, the areas that they're not so strong in, and give them resources and help them. Not only will that help them begin their preparation for the national licensure exam, it will also help you to begin to assess where they are in terms of their competencies. Because again, in the beginning stage of the developmental model of supervision, you're assessing them in terms of their competencies, what they know, what are their strengths, because for many people, your supervision with them as their marriage and family therapy associates will be the last supervision they will ever do that will help them, that will help and assist them on their journey to licensure. So how did I get here again? A lot of times it's hard to see the first time. I went to www.a as in apple, M as in marriage, F as in family, T as in therapy, R as in regulatory, B as in board.org. It's a very important website. And then I went to the Student MFT Canada and Licensee page. You could also go to the Supervisors and Training Programs page to get to this. And then I looked under MFT exam, and then I clicked on Handbook for Candidates. Do you see it there, Handbook for Candidates? And I went to page 11, and I looked at the next pages. Very much something you probably want to make notes about, because it's information that you can pull up with your supervisees. They're interested in passing the national exam if they haven't already, and if they have, it still is a talking point about which of these domains and subdomains are they strong in and not so strong in. Let me just for a moment go off topic, because I want to show you several other things that can be helpful to your supervisees here. There's information on the AMFTRB practice exam they may want to take as they're preparing for the national exam as well. There is a directory here, a state board index. If you have a supervisee that you're supervising here in Kentucky that is going to move to Arizona, you can go to this, click on Arizona, and it'll bring up the licensing board information for Arizona. It has their address in Phoenix, phone number, email for the board office, and then you can click on the Arizona board website to find out about licensure in Arizona. It's not that uncommon, because life happens that someone will be a marriage and family therapy associate, and they will have a partner that gets a great job in Arizona, great job in Delaware, etc., and they have to move. So you knowing how to access this information to get this to them will be very, very helpful when that happens. But that's really not what this is about as much as it is that we are looking at a developmental model of supervision. So what was that about, what we just did? We were just looking at helping supervisees to assess their competencies, to educate and to assess supervisees' competencies. So far in the beginning stage of the developmental supervision model, we develop our relationship with our supervisees. We assess their competencies. Again, why is that so important? Because we're finishing the job. The job began in their academic programs, and now we're finishing it. We're polishing it. We're helping them identify things they didn't get in their master's program, things that may have not even been covered because there's so much to cover, things that are important now that are not taught in master's programs generally, like the business side of therapy and such. So assess your supervisor's competencies, educate them, and then monitor their early experiences. So as we look at that, let's look at the supervisor. What is the supervisor's primary responsibility? Ability They also encourage the supervisee. They assess the supervisee's strengths and weaknesses. They develop goals. And then I want you to see the last three parts of this, and particularly those of you who are supervising in a public agency. Oftentimes the culture in public agencies is for the licensure supervisor to review and sign contracts, to review the supervisee's clients, review policies, procedures, and ethics, but to do it more from an administrative standpoint, or to just review case notes and talk about what's in the case note and then sign off. I understand the importance of that in terms of making sure that the supervisee's work can be paid for. I also understand the importance of that in terms of risk management in a couple of ways. One, your risk management because you're supervising them, and in many cases you're also signing the note depending on the payer if they require the supervisor to sign or not, and also because you want them to be able to write case notes that will help them and get the document well in case they get in trouble. I get all of that. However, that there needs to be more than that in good clinical supervision. You're taking responsibility in many ways for their cases. You're ultimately responsible. You're taking responsibility to help develop and mentor their careers. So it's up to you to do as well as you can in those areas. You're encouraging the supervisee, and as we spoke about earlier, you're assessing the supervisee's strengths and weaknesses, and you're helping them to develop goals. You can do the last three bullet points that traditionally are done in agencies and still carve out the space in sessions to help them develop as well. The supervisee has a part two in the relationship. The supervisee is to seek and accept direction, discuss perception, their unique perspective on their strengths and weaknesses, provide supervisor with information requested as a supervisor, ask for information, and as well review and sign the supervisory contract, set supervision goals. I really believe that's a mutual thing. It's that you're negotiating with them. There's things the supervisee wants out of supervision, and you're discussing the deliverables with them. You know, are these appropriate goals? Can we tweak these a bit to be more in alignment with the standards of the profession, etc.? And then to practice safe and prudent therapy within the structure provided. And again, since you as the supervisor are taking the primary responsibility for this, you're providing the structure and helping to create an environment that they can practice well, they can practice safely, they can receive support from you, and they can do this in a structured way. Also in the beginning stage, the supervisor educates supervisors in areas of need such as ethics, liability, assessment, etc. Again, as we discussed, going to that amftrb.org, again, amftrb.org website, now looking at the AMFTRB domains and seeing where they perceive themselves to be weak and strong. That's a beginning place. And as you look at their videos, and as you do live supervision with them, and as you do co-therapy types of things with them, and as you review videos, you're also going to be seeing additional needs. So helping them to see these needs, helping them to polish off what needs to be polished off there is important. The supervisor provides direct and consistent observation of therapy, provides structure for supervisory sessions, limit autonomy until competence in performance is evidence. The supervisee reviews policies and procedures for practice and seeks clarification and is willing to take risks and practice within the boundaries of the supervisory relationship. The supervisee also is encouraged to question, is encouraged to hypothesize in this beginning stage. So, it's important, particularly those of you who are doing agency supervision, to socialize them to know the policies and procedures in your agency, in your clinical context, or if they're in another agency, how to acquire the policies, how to know what's acceptable and not acceptable. That's part of socializing them to be professional, modeling for them the value in seeking clarification in these things. The supervisee is also willing to take risks and practice within the boundaries of the supervision relationship and question and hypothesize. Let them question, encourage their questions. Help them to develop hypotheses. A Socratic method is really, really useful here. You formulating good questions with them can be very helpful as well. So let's look more at the development and this developmental supervision in the beginning stage. The supervisor provides direct feedback often and combined with information and practice as needed, is available for direct intervention in critical incidents, reviews and improves all documentation, and documents supervisory activities. The supervisor does all of those things. Allow me to go back to that. Is available for direct intervention in critical supervision, in critical instance, reviews and approves all documentation, documents supervisory activities. Again, particularly for those of you in agency cultures, don't just be about reviewing and approving all documentation. Be about that. That's important, but also value their raw data, value their work, provide direct feedback, combine that with information and practice, be available to them, document the supervisory activities, and also the supervisee will provide information to the supervisor regarding wants and expectations of supervision. It's a relationship, right? We know this as marriage and family therapists, so we want to do what we can to make it safe for our supervisees to ask for those questions, to encourage that. Recognize that anxiety is normal and discuss concerns with the supervisee related to that anxiety. Let's look at the middle stage in the developmental model. Goals. And I don't like this word dependency. I begrudgingly use it. The literature uses it. The AMFT Code of Ethics talks about not exploiting the dependency of supervisees and students. They are in many ways dependent on us to continue to practice because they can't practice unless they're practicing under a board-approved supervisor. They're dependent on us to, as gatekeepers of the field, to let them move forward. So that is true, but at the same time, we want to think about how we're moving them to where they're hearing their own voices. But not just a voice that's coming out of the air, but a voice that's informed by MFT theory, by MFT ethics, by MFT practice skills, and so forth. A voice that's developing in terms of preferred models of therapy and such. So in the middle stage, you're really helping them transition there. It's characterized oftentimes by a struggle in the supervisory relationship. The supervisor wants to move forward, and the supervisors wants to tread carefully. Sometimes this is already worked out if they've gone through a really good co-AMFT accredited marriage and family therapy program or other programs. Not all the good programs are co-AMFT accredited, by the way. There's many that aren't. I did not mean to imply that those were only good MFT programs. I certainly don't believe that in a million years. But in some programs where the supervision has been excellent and they've had a chance to be watched a lot doing clinical work, either through live supervision or video supervision, receive support, they may have developmentally already gone through this before they get to you, but at the same time, it's likely that there will be some of these struggles in the middle stage of supervision. So, it's natural for the supervisee sometimes to want to move forward and the supervisor wanting to be a bit cautious. After all, they're working under your license. In the middle stage, in developmental supervision, the supervisor might role play, provide ethical dilemmas, design what if or as if scenarios to explore and discuss. These can be really, really helpful, particularly if a supervisee in the middle stage is feeling as if he or she has transcended the need for supervision. There's often times in a development of an MFT that a supervisee thinks he or she's beyond the need for supervision, feeling pretty confident. And so these things can be helpful and explore various theoretical approaches. Okay, so you're a solution-focused marriage and family therapist. If I were to ask you how an MRI therapist would do it, how might an MRI therapist would do this? If I were to ask you how a narrative